Today, we're going to get right into the internal world of autism. We're going to try and understand how sensory experiences, what someone is feeling on the inside, can shape behaviors that, let's be honest, are so often misunderstood from the outside. We're going to connect the dots.
So, let's just start with this question. Really think about it for a second. What does it feel like for you to be completely and totally overwhelmed? Remember that feeling? That rising panic, the noise in your head, that desperate urge to just get away from it all? Now imagine if that wasn't just a once-in-a-while thing, but something you had to navigate constantly.
To really get this, we have to start with the most important source there is, the actual lived experiences of autistic people. Before we get into any of the science, we just have to listen.
This first quote just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? It's all about sensory sensitivity. For a lot of us, a busy mall or a loud restaurant is just an annoyance, but for some, it can feel like a full-on assault. Think about the massive amount of energy it takes just to exist in a space like that.
And here we see a physical response to that world. This is often called stimming, and it's so important to get this right. These movements, they're not random. They are incredibly purposeful. They're a coping mechanism, a way to regulate yourself in a world that feels completely out of control.
Okay, and this quote brings in another huge piece of the puzzle, the need for routine. Right? If your sensory world is always chaotic and unpredictable, structure and planning become like a safe harbor. So an unexpected change, even a small one, isn't just an inconvenience. It can feel like the floor has dropped out, triggering what this person calls a meltdown.
And this last one, wow, it really shows how deep these challenges can go. It affects something as fundamental as communication. This isn't about someone choosing to be loud. It's about a disconnect in the internal system that's supposed to manage all of that.
So we've heard these really powerful first-hand accounts. Now let's shift gears and look at the neurological why. What is actually going on inside the brain that leads to these experiences? Well, at the very heart of it all is something called sensory processing. You can think of it like your brain's operating system. It takes in all the information from your senses, sight, sound, touch, and figures out what to do with it. But for many autistic people, that operating system is, well, it's dysregulated. It's wired differently. And when that system is dysregulated, it starts to misread the data. The buzz of the fluorescent lights, the tag scratching your neck, the crowded sidewalk, these aren't just registered as normal, everyday things. The brain can interpret them as a literal threat, a danger to your survival.
And when your brain thinks you're in danger, look what happens. That sensory threat doesn't take the normal route to the logical, thinking part of your brain. Nope, it gets fast-tracked straight to the brainstem, the most ancient, primitive, survival-focused part of you. And that immediately triggers the classic fight, flight, or freeze response. The whole system gets hijacked, and it becomes almost impossible for information to get to the parts of the brain that handle reason or emotional regulation.
So what happens when that survival alarm gets pulled over and over and over again? What does it look like when the entire system just shorts out? Let's connect this brain science to the behaviors we can actually see.
Now, this next point is absolutely crucial. We have to understand the difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. They are not the same thing. A tantrum is often behavioral, it's goal-oriented, and the person is still basically in control. A meltdown, it's the complete opposite. It's an involuntary neurological event. It's the brain's fuse box blowing because of that system overload we just talked about. It is, and this is a great phrase, neurobiological chaos. There's a total loss of control, and it can take a very, very long time to recover from.
And you know what? Science is really starting to back this up. A major study from the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, found a direct, measurable link between these sensory processing issues and behaviors that look like aggression. But what's really fascinating is that the research gets even more specific. It turns out that different kinds of sensory profiles can lead to different kinds of responses. So what they call reactive aggression, that impulsive, in-the-moment fight response, that was linked to people with higher sensory sensitivity, the folks who are easily overwhelmed. But proactive aggression, which is more planned out, was actually linked to something called low registration, which is a difficulty even noticing or processing sensory input to begin with. Two totally different internal worlds, leading to different external behaviors. So the big conclusion from the study is basically a call to action for every clinician out there. It says, hey, if you're trying to help someone with aggressive behavior, you can't just look at the behavior itself. You have to look at their underlying sensory world. It's the key to everything.
Okay, so we've got the what and we've got the why.
That's great. But how can we actually, help? Let's get into a practical toolkit for support.
One really effective way to think about responding in the middle of a meltdown is this 3-step model. Regulate, relate, and reason. In that order. Always. First, regulate. Your only job is to make sure everyone is safe and for you to stay calm. Use very few words, don't add more fuel to the sensory fire. Then, once things de-escalate, you move to step 2. Relate. This is where you show empathy. You validate their experience, you let them know you're there, and then only much, much later, when they are completely calm and regulated again, do you even think about step 3, reason. And this isn't a lecture. It's a gentle conversation to try and figure out what the trigger might have been.
All right, so that's the immediate, in-the-moment response. But what about the bigger picture? What does professional clinical support look like?
Well, we can look at guidelines from groups like the Massachusetts Child Psychiatry Access Program, or MCPAP. This is a program that gives doctors clear, evidence-based advice on how to handle these exact kinds of challenges.
And their approach is so important to see. When it comes to irritability and aggression, what's the very first line intervention? It's not medication. It is always behavioral interventions. That means working on coping skills, changing the environment, and addressing the root causes before anything else.
Now, yes, the guidelines do note that for very severe cases, there are FDA-approved medications like risperidone and aripiprazole, but it's critical to see these for what they are, a specific tool for specific situations used only after that foundational behavioral and environmental support is already in place.
So as we bring this all together, let's come back to the single most important idea, the one thing to take away from all of this. A meltdown, or an aggressive response that comes from sensory overload, it is not a choice. It's not bad behavior. It's a physiological, neurological response to a brain and a body that is completely and totally overwhelmed.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. How would our responses change at home, in schools, in our communities if we could learn to see these behaviors not as defiance, but as a desperate signal of distress? Because that one shift in perspective, well, it could change everything.